You don't fall in love at first sight. You are discovered by it, like a shipwreck found by a deep-sea diver, all quiet and slow-motion surprise. That's how it was with Clara. I was 24, all sharp edges and unfinished sentences. She was 46, a composition in soft sweaters and the quiet scent of jasmine that clung to the air long after she'd left a room. We weren't supposed to happen. And for a long time, we didn't. We were just two people orbiting the same world, me, the aspiring writer temping at the architectural firm, her, the partner who moved through the chaos with a grace that felt like a rebuttal to the entire frantic world. It started in the office kitchen on a Tuesday, because of course it did. The most mundane of altars. The hum of the fluorescent light was the only sound. It was past 7, the floor empty save for us. She was standing at the counter, staring into her mug as if the tea leaves held an answer she was afraid to read. I was waiting for the ancient kettle to boil, hyper-aware of the few feet of space between us. "Liam," she said, her voice softer than the one she used in boardrooms. It was a voice for late nights and confidences. I turned. She was looking at me now, her gaze a tangible weight. "Do you ever," she began, then stopped, her lips pressing together. She looked down at her hands, wrapped around the ceramic. "Do you ever feel like you built your entire life on the wrong blueprint? That you followed the plans perfectly, but ended up in the wrong house?" The kettle clicked off, the sudden silence roaring in my ears. I didn't move. "Sometimes," I said, the word coming out rough. It was a pathetic response, but it was all I had. She gave a small, wry smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Lucky you. To still have, sometimes. For me, it's the wallpaper in every room." She reached for the kettle at the same moment I did. Her hand, cool and smooth, brushed against mine. It was the briefest contact, a half-second of shared warmth, but it sent a jolt straight up my arm, a live wire of connection. We both pulled back as if burned. Her eyes flew to mine, wide, the careful composure cracked. In that unguarded moment, I saw it all, the quiet desperation, the yearning, the profound fatigue of being the one who always had the answers. I saw the woman, not the partner. She gestured vaguely towards her office. "Clara," I said, her name feeling foreign and sacred on my tongue. She paused, her body half turned to leave, a silhouette against the city lights blooming outside the window. "Why would you stop?" I asked, the question leaving me before I could cage it. "Thinking that way. Why would you ever stop?" She went perfectly still. The air grew thick, charged with everything we weren't saying. Her eyes searched mine, and for a terrifying, exhilarating second, I thought she might answer. I thought she might step closer and tell me. But then a door clicked open down the hall, the sound of heels on polished concrete echoing towards us. The spell shattered. Her professional mask slid back into place, smooth as a veil, but her eyes held mine for a heartbeat longer, a silent promise, a silent scream. And then she was gone, leaving me alone in the humming silence with the ghost of her touch on my skin and the scent of jasmine hanging in the air, a question she never answered. The kitchen moment became a ghost that haunted our every interaction. We didn't speak of it. Instead, we orbited. I started noticing the small things, the way she'd tuck a strand of hair behind her ear when concentrating, the faint line that appeared between her brows when a design displeased her. I catalogued the quiet music of her, the soft rustle of her sweater as she moved, the specific cadence of her footsteps. I learned her story in fragments, pieced together from late-night conversations that felt both too intimate and not enough. A marriage that had dissolved not in a firestorm, but in a slow, quiet frost. A house that was too big for one person. A life that looked perfect from the outside, a sleek architectural model, but felt hollow in the rooms you were supposed to live in. "People see the finished building," she said once, her voice low as we reviewed plans under the warm pool of her desk lamp. "They never see the revisions, the structural compromises, the support beams you had to add later to keep the whole thing from collapsing. I understood then that her question in the kitchen wasn't theoretical. It was the central crack in her foundation. The risk was a presence in the room with us. It was in the way I'd bite back a comment that felt too young, too unformed for her. It was in her careful politeness in front of others, a wall erected to shield us from the raised eyebrows, the whispered, "Oh, her and the new boy," that would reduce this, whatever it was, to a cliché. The tension was a physical thing. One afternoon, leaning over my shoulder to point at a line on my screen, her breath brushed against my neck. It was warm and carried the faint scent of her tea. My entire world narrowed to that patch of skin. I held my breath, my muscles locking, terrified that the slightest movement would shatter the moment and send her retreating. She lingered a second too long. I could feel the heat of her chest near my back. The air grew thick, charged. Then, as if catching herself, she straightened, her hand brushing my shoulder in a gesture that could have been accidental. But the touch lingered, a brand through the cotton of my shirt. "Sorry," she murmured, her voice slightly unsteady. I finally dared to look up at her. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes wide with a mixture of alarm and a raw, unmasked want that mirrored my own. We didn't speak. We just looked at each other, the hum of the computer the only sound in the silent, electric space between us. The air was alive with everything we couldn't say, a confession spoken not in words, but in a shared, trembling breath. The office became a minefield of almosts. We were in the archive room, a narrow space lined with towering shelves of old blueprints. The air was thick with the smell of dust and aged paper. I was reaching for a portfolio on a high shelf, my fingers just brushing the leather edge. "Here, let me," she said, her voice close. She moved in behind me, her body a whisper away from mine, her arm reaching up to guide my hand. The entire length of her pressed against my back for one breathtaking second. I could feel the soft wool of her sweater, the shape of her. My breath hitched. Her hand closed over mine on the portfolio, not to guide, but to hold. It was an electric shock of contact. We were frozen there, a statue of stolen intimacy, my heart hammering against my ribs so loudly I was sure she could feel it. The door to the archives clicked open. We sprang apart as if scalded. Mark from accounting stood there, blinking in the dim light. "Oh. Clara. Didn't know you were down here." Clara's smile was a masterpiece of instant, placid composure. "Just helping Liam find the Hadley project." Her voice was smooth as glass, betraying nothing. But her hand, now clenched at her side, trembled slightly. "Right," Mark said, his eyes flicking between us, a flicker of curiosity in his gaze. He grabbed a file and left, the door sighing shut behind him. The silence he left was heavier than before, now laced with a sharp, metallic fear. She didn't look at me. She leaned against the shelves, her head bowed. "This is," she whispered, the word hanging in the dusty air. "Irresponsible. Reckless. A mistake." "I know," I said, my own voice rough. Finally, she turned. The professional mask was gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability that made my chest ache. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Liam, I'm twice your," I didn't let her finish. I took a single step forward, closing the distance. I didn't kiss her. I didn't touch her. I just stood there, so close I could see the gold flecks in her green eyes, so close our breath mingled in the small space between us. "I don't care," I whispered. A tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Her gaze dropped to my lips, then back to my eyes. The air crackled. Her hand came up, hovering near my chest, not quite touching. It was a surrender. A confession. We were a breath apart, balanced on a knife's edge, pulled together by a force that felt stronger than every reason we had to stay away. The firm's holiday party was a glittering, noisy affair. I saw her across the crowded room, a glass of champagne in her hand, laughing at something a man in a sharp suit was saying. He was her age, his hand resting lightly on her arm. A familiar, possessive gesture. It shouldn't have mattered. But it did. A hot, sharp twist of something ugly coiled in my gut. Gentle jealousy. It wasn't gentle at all. I spent the next hour watching them, my own drink warm and forgotten in my hand. I saw the way he leaned in, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes, a polished performance. She was playing a part, the successful, available Clara. The one everyone expected her to be. I found her later, alone on the terrace overlooking the city. The cold night air was a shock after the stifling heat of the party. She was leaning against the railing, her shoulders slumped, the facade finally down. "Liam," she said, without turning around. She always knew it was me. Who was he? The question was out, stripped of any pretense of casualness. She turned, her face illuminated by the distant city lights. An old friend. It doesn't matter. It looked like it mattered. A sad, weary smile touched her lips. "You're too young to be jealous." "Don't," I said, my voice low. "Don't do that. Don't use my age as a shield." I moved closer. The space between us vanished. I could feel the warmth radiating from her, see the quickened pulse at the base of her throat. The scent of her jasmine perfume was intoxicating in the cold air. "Clara," I whispered. Her breath hitched. Her eyes were wide, filled with a war I could feel raging inside her. Fear. Desire. The crushing weight of what people would say. "This is a mistake," she breathed, but she didn't pull away. My hand came up, trembling slightly, and brushed a stray strand of hair from her cheek. My thumb traced the line of her jaw. Her skin was impossibly soft. She leaned into the touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a second, a silent surrender that shattered me. "I don't care," I repeated, my voice a raw whisper near her ear. "I haven't cared for a long time." Her eyes opened. They were dark, deep pools of want and terror. Her lips parted. The world narrowed to that single, breathless inch between us. The city, the party, the consequences, it all faded into a distant hum. I leaned in. And the terrace door swung open. It was just a colleague, laughing, stumbling out into the cold for a smoke. The moment shattered. Clara stepped back as if my touch had burned her, the mask of the composed partner slamming back into place so fast it left me dizzy. We didn't speak for a week. A brutal, silent stretch of time where the ghost of our almost kiss haunted the hallways. I was sure I had ruined it. That I'd been too young, too reckless, too much. Then, a Saturday. Rain sheeting down the windows of the near-empty office. I was the only one there, trying to lose myself in work. The key turned in the main door, and I knew it was her before I saw her. I always knew. She stood in the doorway of my cubicle, her coat dripping onto the floor. She looked pale, her hair damp from the rain. "His name was David," she said, her voice quiet, stripped bare. No greeting. Just the truth, laid between us like a weapon. The man at the party. We were engaged. A lifetime ago. I stayed silent, my pen frozen in my hand. "He came back," she continued, her eyes holding mine, refusing to let me look away. "He said he made a mistake. That I was the one who got away." A bitter, hollow laugh escaped her. "He wants to try again." The air left my lungs. This was the risk I hadn't even seen coming. Not social judgment, but a ghost from a past I could never compete with. The one that got away. He was real, and he was here. "Are you?" I managed to ask, the words rough. "Are you going to try again?" She took a step into the small space. Then another. The air grew thick with the scent of rain in her. She stopped so close I could see the droplets clinging to her eyelashes. "He asked me why I'd stopped thinking about him," she whispered. "And all I could think about was you." standing in a kitchen, asking me why I would ever stop. Her hand came up, her fingers brushing against the back of my hand where it rested on the desk. A tremor ran through her. I'm terrified, Liam. What I feel for you, it doesn't fit the blueprint. It's a beautiful, impossible, structural flaw. I turned my hand over, palm up. An invitation. A question. She looked down at our hands, then back at my face, her eyes filled with a storm of fear and a desperate, undeniable hope. I told him no, she said, her voice barely a whisper. And she placed her hand in mine. The decision was made. The point of no return was not a kiss, but this, the simple, terrifying act of our fingers threading together, holding on as the world outside the rain-streaked windows ceased to exist. Her hand in mine was a key turning in a lock. The office, with its hum of dormant computers and the drumming rain, became the entire world. I stood, our joined hands the only anchor, and she didn't retreat. She looked up at me, her breath a shallow, visible cloud in the cool, damp air. This is insane, she whispered, but she was leaning in, her body a magnetic pull against the space between us. I know, I said, my free hand coming up to cradle her jaw, my thumb stroking the soft skin beneath her ear. Her eyes fluttered closed at the touch. But I'm done pretending I don't see you. That I don't feel you in every single room. A small, broken sound escaped her lips. It was the sound of a dam breaking. Everyone will talk. They'll say you're, let them, I murmured, leaning closer until my forehead rested against hers. Our breaths mingled, warm and shared. They aren't in this room. They don't know what this is. She was trembling, a fine, constant vibration I could feel through my hand on her face, through her fingers tangled with mine. It wasn't fear of me, I realized. It was fear of this, the terrifying, magnificent force of a feeling that refused to be blueprinted or contained. I'm so much older, she breathed, her last, fragile defense. I smiled, a real one, for the first time in that long, tense week. You're just ahead of me on the path. That's all. Let me catch up. That was it. The last of her resistance crumbled. Her eyes opened, and they were clear, certain, and filled with a warmth that finally reached their depths. She saw me. Not the temp, not the younger man. Just me. Okay, she whispered, the word a surrender and a beginning all at once. She let go of my hand only to bring both of hers to my face, pulling me down. The first kiss was not a collision, but a homecoming. It was slow, deep, and achingly tender. A silent conversation of everything we'd held back, the longing in the kitchen, the jealousy on the terrace, the fear in the archives. It was her sigh of relief against my mouth, my arms wrapping around her, pulling her flesh against me until not a sliver of light could pass between us. It was the feel of her heart hammering against my chest, a frantic, joyful rhythm that matched my own. When we finally parted, breathless, foreheads still touching, the air was different. The tension was gone, replaced by a profound, quiet understanding. There were no more questions. The blueprint was discarded. We had chosen to build something new, from the ground up, together. We didn't leave the office for a long time. We sat on the worn sofa in the break room, the one nobody ever used, her legs curled under her, her head resting on my shoulder. My arm was around her, my fingers tracing idle patterns on the soft wool of her sleeve. The rain had softened to a gentle whisper against the windows. The world hadn't ended. The ceiling hadn't caved in. The only thing that had changed was everything. I was so afraid, she said, her voice quiet in the dim light. I thought it would feel like a mistake. Like I was stealing something. I pressed a kiss to her hair. It smelled of rain and jasmine. What does it feel like now? She was silent for a moment, her body relaxing more deeply against mine. It feels like coming home after a very long trip. To a home you didn't know you had. The age, the gap that had once felt like a canyon, now felt like nothing more than a slight step. It wasn't that it didn't exist, it was that it no longer mattered. She wasn't my senior, and I wasn't her junior. We were just Liam and Clara, two people who had finally stopped fighting the pull of a truth that was bigger than both of us. There were no grand promises, no dramatic declarations. There was just this, the weight of her against my side, the steady rhythm of her breathing, the warmth of her hand finding mine and lacing our fingers together. It was a quiet understanding, a silent vow built in the space between one breath and the next. It was a new blueprint, one drawn not for appearance, but for living. She tilted her head back, and I met her gaze. Her eyes were clear, no longer shadowed by fear or regret. I leaned in and kissed her, not with the desperate hunger of before, but with a slow, deep certainty. A seal on their promise. When we finally walked out, hands linked, the city lights were blurred halos in the wet streets. We didn't know what tomorrow would bring, the whispers, the looks, the complications. But we knew we would face it together. No more hiding. No more quiet desperation in empty kitchens. Just us, finally, beginning. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?